And now, from beyond our dimension, this is the JeffMara podcast. Here's Jeff.
My guest is Brian O'Brien, who during his near-death experience saw his grandparents and an orb on the other side, which we're going to learn about today and more. Brian, thank you for joining me and welcome.
Thank you.
Brian, let's start on the day that you had your NDE and go from there.
Okay, well, I'd been contemplating suicide for a long time and decided that was the day I was going to do it. So I went to the store and I bought some sleeping pills. They had gone on sale that day, so I picked up a couple extra boxes. Wound up with 4 boxes of sleeping pills. Stopped at the liquor store and bought a pint of Jim Beam, which was awkward for me because normally I'm an alcoholic and I drank about a liter full of Jack Daniels every day for many years. But I thought if I was going to do this and if I wound up not succeeding, that maybe that was a change I should make in my life, was buy a smaller bottle of a different kind of whiskey, which sounds goofy, but that was just where my thought process was. So I went home and I got real mellow and I made my bed, which is very out of the ordinary. I cleaned the house, at the apartment rather, and all the while smoking pot, smoking bong hits, just getting real, I don't want to say intensely mellow because that's kind of counterintuitive, but or that maybe that's the wrong word, but I was very mellow, thinking about what I was going to do and whether or not I really should do it. And I come to the conclusion that yes, that's indeed what I needed to do. So I finally got the balls up and I started taking all those little, there were 32 in each packet, each box of 4. And I started unsealing. They were wrapped up in that little bubble wrap that you have to peel the foil off of. And give me 1 second. I was peeling all the bubble wrap off and I was thinking to myself, this normally would piss me off. A lot of my medicine had that bubble wrap on it, and it used to make me so crazy just unwrapping it because it was always so difficult, and I thought that was stupid. But it wasn't irritating me this time. I was just doing it. I was peaceful about it. And I unwrapped all 128 of those pills, put them in the glass, and I sat it there for a while. And then I finally decided it was time, so I got some Jim Beam out of the bottle, and I drank some water with the pills and washed it down with the Jim Beam. And then I went back into the living room after I swallowed all those pills. I went back in the living room, and I just sat there and waited for a while, waited for it to take effect. Smoking a pot, drinking the rest of the pint of whiskey, and then I started getting real tired. So I thought, here it is. And I went and laid down on my bed, and I laid there, and I've always been able to go to sleep real quick. It's never been a problem for me. So I fell asleep fairly quickly. Then the next thing I know, I was feeling this extreme vertigo. I was spinning and falling and falling and spinning and spinning and falling, and it just got real intense to the point that I sat up in my bed. I just bolted straight upright in this water bed that usually I had such a hard time moving around on. But I bolted straight upright, and then I looked at the clock, and I don't recall what time it was or how much time had passed, but I remember remembering what I had just done, and that I needed to just lay my head back down and go back to sleep and wait. And so the next thing I know, I was in this field of grass. It was really tall grass, and I was walking around in this field, and there were 2 young boys there. They must have been 10 or 11 years old. They both had blonde hair and bobbed haircuts. And we all knew that we were all there, but nobody spoke a word. We just kind of understood that we were there. And that, I don't know how long the whole time conundrum was I don't recall how much time was spent. I could tell you a lot of time or a little bit of time, or this went on for about a medium amount of time. Um, and then I felt myself being drawn upwards. And so the next thing I know, I was sitting in a trunk, or not the trunk, a branch on a tree overlooking this huge castle. Um, the garden had a bunch of trees in it with sidewalks in between the trees. Um, and and I could see the people or whatever they were. I could see uh, things moving forward into the castle and people coming out of the castle, um, kind of in a real. This sounds weird, but like it reminded me of the game Frogger, where you just jump forward and jump forward and jump forward. It was kind of that jerky motion that they were making, and I looked to my side, and there was this orb that that had just been sitting there glowing, and I felt so much warmth and love and forgiveness and peace and joy, and it was just such a soothing thing to be around. Um, and I knew it was some sort of spirit. Since then, I've realized that it was the Holy Spirit, but I didn't realize that until many years later. Um, but anyway, we sat there for a while, and then the orb moved myself and himself up to a further higher part of wherever it was we were, and we were just kind of floating in air and talking to each other, uh, just completely telekinetic, that's the wrong word, telepathically talking. Um, and we talked for hours and hours and hours. It seemed like forever that we talked. And I couldn't tell you a thing we said. I don't remember a bit of it. The only thing I remember is that he told me where I had been, where I was now, and where I was headed. And and that's all I remember of what was said after all that time talking to him. Um, so so he had moved me to another part of wherever it was I was. Um, I was in this field. It was a field of trees. They were like aspen trees, um, but they were in hibernation. There were no leaves on them. There were cockleburs on the ground and stickers, and I was brushing them all aside as I moved along. And I came upon this big wall. It was a huge wall. I couldn't see the top of it. Um, it seemed like it was made out of brick and concrete, or concrete and clay, or it was that's just what it seemed like. I can't tell you. And it appeared to have been painted white. Um, and so I was walking through this field with the trees and scooting the stickers out of my way and walking along this wall. And I had my hands on the wall trying to find a place because I wanted to get to the other side of the wall, because I could feel that there was life growing on on the other side of the wall. And I tried and tried. I tried to get over it. I tried to get through it. I tried so hard, and to no avail. Um, until the next thing I noticed, I had been transported to the other side of the wall, and I found myself standing on the porch of this huge castle. Um, there was it was huge. There must have been the front door must have been 20 feet tall. Um, and I could tell there was a party going on inside. Um, Not necessarily a raver or anything, but just people in there having a good time, um, like a house party, if you will. So I knocked and knocked and knocked on the door. I pounded on the door as hard as I could, but the door was probably, I don't know, a foot thick. It was just that big castle kind of door from ancient times. Um, and so there had been a sort of a peephole, but it was the kind of peephole where it's an actual actual door, and you open the whole little door, and there's a whole window there, not just a little hole. There was a whole window, and it kind of had a cage around it. Uh, and I felt someone come to the door, and I felt like I felt they were at the door, and I looked up, and I could see him opening. It was a man of some sort. I could see him open the peephole, and he looked around, and I was screaming at the top of my lungs, "I'm down here! I'm down here! Help me! I'm down here! I want in!" And he shut the window, and that was that. And I never got to go in. I never got to see the inside. Um, the next thing I know, I was sitting back on that tree branch, the first one that I had come in, and I could see the Holy Spirit walking away and telling me, go back. Uh, and so then I woke up, and and I had a I I was still in this daze, if you will. I don't really know what to call it. After all this time, I still don't know what to call it. Um, but I had sat myself up on the side of my bed, and I have a three-way mirror, and I set the three-way mirror around so I could see myself in every reflection as if I was sitting in a circle with myself. And I was having conversations again telepathically with the reflections in the mirror, and the the reflection in the left was I could see my grandma in that picture, or in that reflection of myself. And I saw her face, I saw her, I saw her body language, and I could feel her attitude's not the greatest word, but for lack of better terminology, I could feel her attitude. She was scolding me. She was very upset with me. Um, she didn't know why I did what I had done. And then the reflection in front of me was that was the grandma that I had spent so much of my life with growing up as a kid. She was my mom's mom, and she was we spent all kinds of time with her growing up. She died when I was in 10th grade or 11th grade. Um, the picture, the reflection in front of me was my grandpa, my dad's dad, who had also committed suicide. Um, I must have been in ninth or 10th grade. Um, and he wasn't really scolding me, but I could tell he was upset about the way that I had done things, but he understood, and I could feel the understanding in his eyes. Um, and and then the reflection on the right side was just me being me. It was I was partying, I was having a good time. Um, I spent most of my time talking to that reflection, um, because the other two reflections kind of freaked me out. I didn't know what to think of them. I didn't know. Um, and so I sat there and talked to the reflections for almost as long as I had talked to the Holy Spirit. It was a really long time. I don't remember how long exactly, like I said, but it seemed like hours. And the next thing I know, I had woken up, and I looked at the clock, and I remembered what I had tried to do, and I realized that I was still alive, and I screamed a few obscenities, and and then I decided I was still real groggy from all the pills. I decided I better call my psych nurse, and I called her and asked her that if what I should do, if I should take more pills, or if I should lay down and wait for the same pills to take effect. Um, which seems kind of silly now to me at this point. But like I said, I was just so messed up still from all the pills, and the consciousness of everything that had been going on. Uh, so Patty told me to pack a bag and get down to the hospital. She wanted to see me in the emergency room, and I said, I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying right here. And Patty said, you don't come down here on your own. I'm going to send an ambulance for you. And I thought, that's the last thing I need is a bill for an ambulance. I'm already behind on my bills. That's the last thing I need. So I packed a bag and I went to the hospital, and I saw Patty, and there was a nurse who told me that I needed to swallow some charcoal. And I said, I'm not swallowing shit. I said, I I I'm not swallowing anything, because my thought process was, if these pills are still going to take effect, I'm not going to do anything to counteract that. Um, so she told me, she said, you have to take them. You have to take the charcoal because you came down here on your own free will. I said, no, I was tricked. I had no idea that I was coming here to get thrown in the hospital. So they put me on the psych ward. They put me in the lockdown side of the psych ward, which is like jail for kids. There were magazines and color books and movies to watch and TV to watch, and uh and so when she told me to pack my bag, of course, like a good drug addict, I took my pot with me, because I was going to pack a bag for 3 days. Of course, I would take my pot with me. And I realized once I got there that, I mean, this isn't like camping. This is, I'm in the hospital, and my pot smelled. And luckily for me, I was in a room by myself, so nobody else could smell it. My mom came to visit a couple days later, or maybe it was the next day. I don't recall. She came to visit though, and I had that pot, and I put it in her purse. I said, "Here, take this home and keep it until I'm out of here." And my mom, the poor naive soul that she is, she said, "Is that marijuana?" And I said, "Yeah, mom, that's pot, and I need you to get it out of here because I can't have it." So she took it home. I was in the lockdown psych ward for about 3 days, and then they switched me to the non-lockdown version. And they let me out every once in a while to go have a cigarette. Uh, and Then a couple days later, they let me out, and I went home, and I threw my cigarettes on the table, and they kind of walked just end on end on the side of the pack of the cigarettes. They kind of walked across the table till they stopped moving. And I thought that was kind of weird, but I decided I was going to say thank you to God for that. And so I said thank you, and found that the more I said thank you, the more things started doing things like that, landing in odd positions, or or just mostly landing in odd positions. Lots of things hanging on the side of a basket or a chair, or just by I mean, like, I've tried and tried and tried sometimes to put it back where it was, and just there's no way I can do it. So I just kept saying thank you to God, and it still happens. Um, anyway, I got home, so I sat there for a while, and I didn't really have the mindset of chilling out at that point in my life. I was very ADHD and high strung, and so I sat in my apartment for about a week. Well, I had gone to work too, and somebody had told everybody at work what had happened, but nobody said a word to me about it except for my friends, um, which was fine by me. I didn't really want to explain myself to a bunch of people that I wasn't friends with. Uh, so about a week later, I thought, this is not working out. I really, really need to go relax somewhere. I need to take a vacation, but I can't afford a vacation. So I packed my little duffel bag and I went to the bathhouse. And I was at the bathhouse for a while, and I don't know if you know what a bathhouse is. It's kind of like a day spa for gay men, and people walking around in towels, and there's a lot of casual sex and a lot of drugs, and but it's set up like a day spa. There's a swimming pool and a hot tub and a weight room and TV sets and video games, and it's just it's very comforting place to be. So I had met this guy, and we went into his room to snort some meth, and he only had a little bit. And so we did that. We hung out for a while, and then he said, "You want to do more? We can go to my place and do more." And I was like, "Well, of course." And every drug addict would want to go where there's free drugs. So we went to his place, and he pulled out a needle, and I didn't realize you could shoot meth, but I decided that I might as well try it because why not at that point? And so he shot me up, and that was the beginning of the meth years. I didn't use for about a year after that, but after that I started smoking, and I used for a couple of years until I finally decided this is not what I want. It's not what I want for myself anymore. I'm tired of the self degradation and the just the horrible things that go along with drug use like that. That's a whole nother story. But here I am now. I've been clean for, well, I haven't done any meth since 2011, so 22 years or 12 years or however long that is. I guess it's 12 years, or 11 years. It's been since 2011. Uh, and I've been meth free since then. I still smoked pot and drank quite a bit for a while. I haven't touched either of those for 2 years. I work in an A program, Narcotics Anonymous, and it's keeping me clean, and I'm happy with my life now. And I can't say I can't say suicide is perfect. It's not. It's not. It's a permanent solution to a temporary problem. My problems were temporary, although I thought that they weren't. I've realized that they were, and so I can't condone suicide, but I understand people who do, who attempt and who succeed, and I just hope that they can find the light like I did.
Brian, thank you for sharing your life with us. When you saw the orb, what color was it?
It was just a shining light. I guess it was white. I guess kind of a white light. It was like a soft incandescent bulb. So yeah, I guess the light itself was white.
Do you remember what color or what the castle looked like in more detail? Like, was it a golden castle or anything special?
The first castle I saw was black. The whole field was black. Um, I could see through the black because of the orb, the light from the orb, but it was still black. I could just see shadows. Um, the other castle that I was on the front step of, I guess was kind of, I guess I'm going to say gray, but I don't know if I really noticed, but that's kind of what's sticking out of my head. Just kind of a charcoal gray, I guess.
Do you feel that your experience was different from a dream?
Oh, completely. It was so real. It was, I mean, like I could reach out and touch things and feel them. And, like I said, I was walking through the field, kicking the stickers and the cockaburs aside. I remember being able to actually feel them being kicked aside. I could feel as I touched them. Um, it was so real. The kids that I saw in the field, um, they were just, it wasn't, it was very three-dimensional.
Would you say that it's more real than actually being here?
I don't know about that. Um, I don't know about that.
Some experiencers will agree that the other side is more real and here is dreamlike.
It's definitely different. It's a different experience. Um, I guess if reality is the word to use, then it was. I definitely noticed a difference though in what was there and what was here.
You took over 100 pills, right?
Yes, sir.
That's amazing that you didn't, succumb to that.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of people have told me that. I for a while I chalked it up to having such a high tolerance for drugs because I did a lot of drugs in those days. Um, but but since then I've decided that, God getting me up and moving me around and keeping me alert on my on the side of my bed, keeping me awake, if that's what you want to call it. Um, talking to talking to reflections of my grandparents. Um, I think God had a lot to do with that in keeping my blood moving so that I wasn't just laying there. I think if I hadn't have had that conversation with my grandparents and myself, I think if I would have just laid there, I think I think the outcome would have been much different.
I believe that you were upset when you got back and that you didn't want to be back, right? Or would you say that?
Right. No, that's 100% right.
How long do you think it took you to process the experience?
Oh, years. Years. It was for such a long time. I mean, I'm talking for at least 10 or 12 years. It was the predominant thought in my head. Nobody could tell me that I didn't die because because who knows what happens after death. I didn't know if we just continued to going on as we go on. And that was a real hard thing for me to have to give up. I wanted to give it up. I just didn't know how. I finally had a conversation with God and said, "You got to take this from me because I can't do it anymore. It's making me insane." Um, but yeah, it took me several years to figure out.
Were you a religious person before this?
Let's see. This is kind of tricky. I grew up in a very strict Southern Baptist like home. My dad was first sergeant in the military, drill sergeant, for 23 years. He uh, he was very strict. My mom was very strict. She was the religious one, and we spent a lot of time in church. Like we were that family that every time the church doors were open, we were there. Um, when I turned about 18, I had given up on religion. I didn't want anything to do with it, but I still believed there was a God. Um, and I went back and forth with the religion thing. I wanted to be a part of something that was bigger than myself, but I still felt separate from a religious group. So by that point, I wouldn't say I was religious, but I was spiritual. And after my NDE, I had definitely given up on religion, and I'm spiritual. I believe there was a Christ. I believe that he did miracles, but I don't believe that that's not anything that we all couldn't do because he was a human being just like us. Um, so I don't think that he did anything special. I think a lot of the Bible is metaphorical, um, and and so I believe that there was a Jesus Christ. I'm sure he's still alive, as I believe that anyone who ever lives is still alive. We all go on forever. Um, but I don't go to church.
Did you come to the realization that even if you ended your own life, nothing changed? You still have the same problems and life, basically still goes on. You're just in a different realm.
I didn't really see it that way at first. Um, maybe now, maybe after the meth years, but at that point, no, life had definitely changed.
The NDE didn't affect you enough to stop using at the time. Why do you think
Oh
that
no,
was?
oh boy, that's a good question. I don't know if I have an answer for you. I just I was that's what made me be able to cope with my own life. I think drugs maybe even helped me cope with my NDE, um, because I was able, again, this is, after a few years of being in Narcotics Anonymous, but maybe that was just because they made me numb the pain, or even not the pain, but numb what I felt, what I was feeling, what I was trying to avoid feeling.
Makes sense. It sounds like that the drugs were a coping mechanism for your life, and this was just a new thing that you had to cope for, so you continued on.
Yeah, yeah.
That's great that you finally came to the realization that you had enough.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, it's been a struggle, but I can't say I'm there because I'll have to work at it my whole life. But I'm on the better side of it, at least, and we're to the point where I want to stay sober and clean, and I want to do what's best for me, what's best for my life, what's best for my friends and family, and uh, and do some good for the world instead of just taking for myself.
To me, it seems that you were divinely meant to stay to be able to survive that many pills.
It's that was a lot of my struggle for so many years, was why me? Why did I get to stay? I know so many other people that would have taken that many pills, and there were 128 of them, and they took that many pills. Somebody who would have taken that many pills would have never even come close to making it. Um, and so that was a big question I had for a long time about what is my purpose,
Hmm.
and and I finally came to the realization that my purpose is to love. It's to show the world, my friends, my family, even people that I don't know, even people that I don't like, to show them the unconditional love of God that I was shown. Um, there's no way I'll ever be able to do it like that, because the love that I felt was just, I, the human body, it can't conceive that kind of love. And I can't give it off, but I can give the best love that I can give to as many people as I can give it to, and I think that is my divine reason for being here.
Do you think it's possible that you're also here to help others stop using?
Probably, um, yeah, most definitely. I don't know how I do it, but I guess when you're in NA, that's, you just share what your stories are, and somehow or other it helps other people stay clean.
Hmm.
So yeah, I guess through sharing my story, that would help other people. Sure,
Do you fear death at all?
not a bit. That's one thing that I came back with, that I knew instantly right away. I'm not afraid to die. I I don't want to say I can't wait to die, but I'm looking forward to being on the other side again, to feel that kind of love and forgiveness and peace.
Is there anything about your experience that inspires you?
Wow, I've never been asked that question before. um, I think the whole experience inspires me. It inspires me to go on and keep going until the end indeed is here. Um, it inspires me to help other people, to love other people.
Hmm. Uh,
I guess that would be it.
After your NDE, did you notice that you had any new abilities that you didn't have prior that could possibly be considered psychic?
Now this is kind of weird. It's not anything that anybody would really think about, except that it happens to me so much. Um, like I'll be listening to somebody talk, or watching TV, or whatever, listening to somebody speaking somewhere, something, and I'll be in my head thinking something else of my own, and someone will say a word right at the same time as I think that word. Um, and I would never even think of it. I would think it would be coincidence if I believed in coincidences, but I don't anymore, and it just happens so often. I mean, I'm talking like even now 4, 5, 6 times a day it happens. Um, like like somebody else say soul, like they're talking like I'd be talking about my soul, my inner being. Right at the same time, someone's talking about the sole of their shoe, but we'll say it in my mind. It'll happen at the same exact time, and I know that just seems so irrelevant, but it really, I mean, it just all I can do is thank God for it because that's what I'm supposed to do. And again, with the things like I said, they land in odd positions and mostly land on their side, and I've actually gotten to the point where I mean, I have a friend who has watched this all go down, um, and even he has mentioned, I see so many things. I come to your house, so many things laying on their side. Like I just leave them there. It's a good reminder for me that, and besides, I just think it's so cool. Um, like a couple times, this happened to me twice. Once I was with my friend Lushane, and we were both just sitting here, and I realized I dropped my Zippo, and I looked down, and it was sitting on its side, like on the thin side, and I thought that was, I mean, we both thought that was strange because we already knew what had been landing on the side, and we just thought that was an excessive one. But then it happened to me again, and I was by myself this time, but I dropped it and kind of did that same thing I told you about with the cigarette pack when I threw it across the table, and it landed on its side and it just stayed there. And those are the things that they're not psychic. I don't have any psychic abilities, but those things happen to me and they happen all the time. So that's my gift that that I have. And I mean, if that's a good enough gift from God for me, that's any gift from God is a good gift from God, and that's just my own personal gift that I've been given that I can just keep between me and God if I want to, or I can tell the world. Sometimes I do. Sometimes I think, everybody's just going to think I'm crazy for saying it, so I don't say it a whole lot anymore. Um, but I still know it happens.
If you had a friend that was grieving over the loss of a loved one, what kind of advice would you give?
I tell them how beautiful it is on the other side. This has happened before. How beautiful it is on the other side. How there's no suffering. There's no physical. We don't have physical bodies on the other side, so there's no physical ailments. We're cured of everything. We're healed. We're and that's just for starters. I mean, the love of God is just so incredible on the other side of the veil. It's just I wish I could explain it, but I just don't have the capacity to do so. Um, and the forgiveness and people tend to tend to they tend to uh, progress towards that inspiration that I give them. That it's better on the other side. It's sad for us that are going to stay here, um, but it's so much better on the other side. We should be throwing a party for this person who got to cross over. And I'm kind of feeling that with my dad right now. My dad's been about a month ago. He got stage 4, or was diagnosed with stage 4 esophageal cancer. And this last week, he's been in the hospital since Thursday, and things just keep getting worse and worse and worse. Um, and so I've been explaining the same thing to my mom. Remember when this happened to me, and this was how it was, and Dad's going to be okay. He's going to be healed, and it's all going to be all right. So I'm glad that I've had that experience that I can share with her, and she understands that I really have some sort of idea what I'm talking about.
Brian, after watching this podcast, People may want to reach out to you and ask you questions. Are you open to that?
Sure.
What's the best way to reach you?
I guess by my email. Do you want me to? Do you want to write it down?
If
Do
you
you want
want
me
to,
to just say
if
it?
you want to say it, that would be great.
It's BJOBRIEN 66 at Yahoo. At gmail.com.
The number was what? 66?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Well, Brian, before we finish up, can you leave us with one last positive message?
One last positive message. Don't be afraid to die. It's always everyone's biggest fear because nobody knows what's on the other side. But having been to the other side, I know what's on the other side, and it's nothing to fear. It's beautiful. It's wonderful. It's blessed. It's it's there is no better place than where I was anyway. So just don't be afraid to die. Embrace it.
Brian, thank you for that message, and thank you for being my guest.
Thanks, Jeff, so much. I appreciate it.
Thanks for watching the JeffMara podcast. I really appreciate you. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. And if you do, there are loyalty badges and other perks depending on your level of membership. All you need to do is click the join button underneath the video to find out more. Thank you for your support.